I'm Derek Malone. Most people called me DJ. I'm 41 years old. I spent my 20s in prison because I was stupid enough to think being a tough guy was something to be proud of. I lost 13 years of my life, my family, and any future I might have had, all for a reputation that means absolutely nothing on the outside. Let me tell you what happened. I saw a kid on the bus yesterday, couldn't be more than 19. He was puffing his chest out, staring down some other kid over nothing. A bumped shoulder, a wrong look. I know the script. It was like looking in a mirror from 2005. I got off at my stop and my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from memory. I knew right then I had to say this, to anyone who'll listen. You see, I was raised in Campbell, just outside Youngstown. A blue-collar neighborhood where the street violence was just background noise, like the trains going by. My two brothers and I, we learned early. You either projected strength or you became a target. By 2011, I was 28. I had my GED and I was working at the scrapyard. That was the plan. That was it. My family, we were already on thin ice. My parents had stopped calling regular. They were tired of the chaos I brought home. My world was those few streets and the crew I ran with. We weren't some big gang, just guys from the same blocks who thought we owned them. That small world makes every little thing feel like a huge threat. Which brings me to a Tuesday night in 2011. It started with a look. A guy from a few blocks over, let's call him Ray, drove through our spot. He looked at me wrong. Or maybe I just decided he did. In my world, that was a challenge you couldn't ignore. My brothers were right there. They started hyping me up, saying he disrespected us, saying he was testing me. That was all it took. The anger just lit up inside me, like someone threw a switch. I remember chasing his car on foot. I was screaming his name, running down the middle of the street. My brothers were right behind me, yelling. We found his car parked outside a corner store. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I yanked the driver's door open, dragged him out, and just started swinging. It was a blur of noise, the thud of my fists, his grunts, my brothers yelling, "Get him, DJ!" The girls from our crew were screaming, but it wasn't fear in their voices then. It was excitement. I walked away from that parking lot feeling like a king. My knuckles were raw and my heart was pounding, but I felt powerful. I had defended my reputation. I was a fool. That feeling of being on top of the world? It didn't last. It never does. A week later, I'm at a bar. Ray's cousin is there. Words get exchanged. Someone says something about the parking lot. A bottle gets broken on the edge of a table. It escalates in seconds. This time, it's not just fists. I wake up the next morning with bruised knuckles, a cut on my arm from the glass, and this hollow, angry pit in my stomach instead of pride. The fear I'd seen in their eyes was gone. I just felt empty, used up. But I couldn't stop. Backing down meant I was weak. That's the lie I was living. And that lie was about to cost me everything. Less than a month after the bar fight, I got the call. It wasn't even about me this time. One of my younger brothers got into it with someone from Ray's crew. The voice on the phone just said, "They're at the old lot." We went. It was supposed to be a show of force, just posturing. But the air was different, heavier. You could feel it was already past talking. We rolled up in two cars, and I saw it in their hands before we even got out. This wasn't going to be a fist fight. Someone had a pipe. Then someone else flashed a knife. A shout, a curse, and then it was chaos. It stopped being a fight and became something else entirely. I was in the middle of it, swinging at a guy I didn't even know. It was all noise and rage and this terrifying momentum, like a train coming off the tracks. I remember the sound of sirens cutting through the night, and that's when the world went cold. The chaos just froze. The red and blue lights washed over everything. I looked down at my hands. I was standing over a guy, and my hands were bloody. Two of my friends were on the ground, not moving. The cops came in hard. They put me in the back of the cruiser. I was breathing hard, the adrenaline crashing, and I was starting to really see what had happened. And then we drove past my parents' house. That's when I saw her. My mom was on the porch. She had her hands over her mouth, just standing there watching her son being taken away. The look on her face, It wasn't anger. It was devastation. Pure heartbreak. That was the last time I saw her for 5 years. In that moment, in the back of that cop car, I knew. I finally understood. The courtroom, the judge saying aggravated assault and 18 years. That just made it official. My real sentence started right then, seeing my mom's face. I had traded her son, my own life, for a title that didn't exist. I had traded her son, my own life, for a title that didn't exist. And then I was gone. They processed me, they put me in a cell, and the world I knew just ended. The next 5 years my mom didn't visit, not once. I got a letter from my dad after the first year. It was short. It just said they couldn't watch their son throw his life away anymore. That they prayed for me, but they had to let go. I read that letter until the paper wore thin at the folds. That hurt more than the sentence. The silence from them was a different kind of prison. Inside, you know what happens to a tough guy? Nothing. You're not special. You're just another number. All that posturing, all that fear I thought I was commanding on the outside, it meant zero in there. The first few years, I was angry, bitter. I'd get into fights. I'd spend time in segregation, staring at a concrete wall. I was still trying to prove that same stupid point, but there was no reputation to defend anymore. There was just time. Endless, empty time. I got my first visit in 2017. It was my middle brother, Mike. He'd done a short bid himself a couple years after I went in, for something stupid and unrelated. He'd gotten out, gotten a job at a tire shop. He sat across from me in the visiting room, and he looked older. We all did. He didn't hype me up. He didn't talk about the old days. He just talked about his kid, about working on cars, about how our youngest brother had moved to Columbus to get away from everything. It was normal talk, boring talk, and I hung on every word. When the visit was ending, he leaned forward. His voice got low. "Ma's sick, DJ." He said it plain. She won't say it, but she asks about you. Asks if you're okay. I felt my throat close up. I couldn't speak. He just looked at me, and his eyes were tired. "When you get out, man, just be out. You hear me? Just be done." That visit changed something in me. The anger finally burned out, and what was left was just this shame, this heavy, cold weight of what I'd done. I started taking any class they offered. I got my forklift certification of all things. I read books. I worked in the library. I stopped trying to be the hardest man in the room and started trying to be invisible. That's when the time got longer somehow. When you're not fighting it, you really feel every single day. I served 13 years of that 18-year sentence. Got out in 2021. They gave me a bus ticket and $75. Stepping outside the gates, the world was too bright, too loud, too fast. I came back to Youngstown, but it wasn't my Youngstown anymore. The old lot was a Dollar General. The corner store was boarded up. The crew? Gone. Scattered, dead, or locked up like I was. That reputation I'd built? It was just a ghost story nobody told anymore. I got a job at a warehouse through a reentry program. It's not the scrapyard, but it's similar. I lift things, I move things, I keep to myself. I live in a small apartment. It's quiet. The first year out, I wrote my mom a letter. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I just told her I was out, that I was working, that I was sorry. I gave her my address. I didn't expect anything back. A month later, there was a knock on my door. It was a Sunday morning. I opened it, and it was my dad. Just him. He stood there for a second, then he hugged me. He's not a hugging man. He just held on to me for a long minute, and when he let go, his eyes were wet. He said, "Your mother, she wants to see you, but she's scared." I understood. I'm still scared. We talk on the phone now, me and my mom. It's awkward. We talk about the weather, about what I made for dinner. We don't talk about the past. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she calls. That's something. It's more than I deserved. You see that tough guy act? That's a prison you build for yourself long before the state ever builds one for you. I lived in that prison from the time I was a teenager. The walls were my pride. The bars were my temper. The sentence was a life of looking over my shoulder, of making every little thing a battle. I was already serving time on those streets. The judge just made it official. The respect I thought I was earning was just fear, and fear is temporary. It evaporates the second you're not in the room. The people I was trying to impress, the brothers and the crew, they didn't visit me. After the first few years, the letters stopped. They moved on. They had to. The only person who has to live with your choices forever is you. You wake up with yourself. You go to sleep with yourself. And in a cell, you're just alone with that person for 23 hours a day. So if you're out there now, maybe on a bus, maybe on a corner, chest puffed out, thinking you need to prove something, I need you to ask yourself a question I was too stupid to ask. Prove it to who? And for what? What's the trophy? A story that'll be forgotten in a week? A night in jail? A scar? A lifetime of regret? Let me tell you what real strength is. It's not in your fists. Anybody can throw a punch. Real strength is in your choices. It's walking away from a fight you know you can win because you finally understand what you'll lose. It's swallowing your pride instead of letting it choke you. That kid on the bus, staring the other kid down, the toughest thing he could do in that moment is take a breath, say my bad, and just keep walking. That takes more guts than any fight, because you're not afraid of the other guy anymore. You're afraid of the person you might become, and you choose not to be him. And you choose not to be him. That's the wisdom. But I didn't have it. Not then. I had to learn it the hardest way possible. I had to sit in a cell for 13 years and watch my life evaporate. The worst part wasn't the time. It was the silence. The emptiness where my family should have been. I told you my mom didn't visit for 5 years. When she finally did, it was 2018. I was 35 years old. I'd been inside for 7 years. I'd gotten my act together, on paper. I was working in the library. I was quiet. But I was a ghost of myself. They called my name for visitation. I didn't believe it. I walked into that room, and there she was, sitting at a small table. She looked so small and old. My mom had gotten old while I was in there. I sat down across from her. We just looked at each other for a minute. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, felt like a pebble thrown at a mountain. She spoke first. Her voice was quiet. Your father's in the car. He couldn't come in. I just nodded. She looked at my hands on the table. My knuckles, which used to be always scraped, were clean. Are you eating? She asked. Yeah, Ma, I'm eating. Are you safe? That question hit me in the chest. After everything, after all the pain I caused her, her first worry was if I was safe. I had to look down. Yeah, I managed to say. I'm safe. I keep to myself. We were quiet again. The room was full of the low murmur of other families, other fractured conversations. She reached into her purse, her hands trembling a little. She pulled out a small envelope. She slid it across the table to me. What's this? I asked. Open it later, she said. I just held it. I could feel there were photographs inside. Ma, I started, but the words clogged in my throat. I know what I did. I know what I cost you. I see it every night. She looked at me then, and her eyes were full of a pain so deep it had worn smooth. I lost my son twice, Derek, she said. My real name, not DJ. First to that anger, then to these walls. I prayed for you to come back to us, but I didn't know if the boy I raised was even in there anymore. I felt my face crumple. I couldn't stop it. I cried right there at that plastic table. I cried like I hadn't since I was a kid. Not the angry tears from Seg, but this broken, helpless feeling. All the armor I'd built, all that tough guy shell, it just shattered. There was nothing underneath but regret. He's here, I whispered, my voice thick. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She reached across the table then, and she put her hand over mine. Her skin was thin, cool. I know, she said, just that. I know. That visit, it broke me open, in a good way. The hard shell I needed to survive the streets, and then the prison, it finally cracked. And what poured out was just grief. Grief for the years I'd stolen from her, from my dad, from myself. Grief for the brother my siblings lost. Grief for the man I could have been if I'd just walked away from that car, from that bar, from that lot. When I got back to my cell, I opened the envelope. There were 3 pictures. One was of me as a kid, maybe 8, holding a fish I'd caught with my dad. I was grinning, missing a tooth. Another was my high school graduation, my GED ceremony. My mom had her arm around me, smiling so wide. The last one was recent. My brothers, their wives, my parents in front of a Christmas tree. There was an empty space on the couch next to my dad, a space where I should have been. I taped that last picture to the wall. That empty space became my focus. That's what my tough guy reputation bought me. Not a throne, a blank spot in my family's life, a silence where my voice should have been. The last 5 years inside, I lived with that. The shame wasn't a hot anger anymore. It was a cold, constant companion. It was the truth. Every class I took, every book I read, every quiet day I got through without a fight, it was me trying to fill that empty space back up, trying to become someone who could maybe, someday, deserve to sit on that couch. I got out in 2021. The world was strange. But that picture in my mind, that empty space, it was clearer than ever. My first year out, trying to rebuild, was the hardest fight of my life. And it was a fight with myself. With the ghost of DJ, the guy who wanted to solve every problem with his fists, who saw every sideways glance as a challenge. That ghost was loud. But I had a new weapon. I had the memory of my mom's hand on mine. I had the image of that empty space. I got my warehouse job. I paid my rent. I stayed in. The loneliness was crushing sometimes. All the friends, the crew, they were gone. The family trust was still fragile, a delicate thing I was afraid to breathe on too hard. Some days the anger would bubble up, at the system, at my own stupidity, at the sheer waste of it all. And that's when the real test came. The test to see if I'd really learned anything. It happened at a gas station, about 6 months after I got out. Some guy cut me off pulling in. He got out of his car, chest puffed up, started mouthing off. "You got a problem?" he snarled, getting in my space. I looked at him. He was maybe 25, wearing a jacket from a local garage. He had that look in his eyes, the same one I used to have, desperate to prove something. My heart started pounding. My hands clenched. Every instinct I'd built over a lifetime screamed at me to shut him up, to put him in his place. But I didn't. I took a breath. I looked past him, at his car. There was a kid's car seat in the back. I looked back at his face, at the fear hiding behind the anger. "No problem," I said, my voice calm. It felt foreign. "My mistake, you go ahead." He stared at me, confused. The script was broken. He was ready for a fight, and I just walked away from it. He muttered something, shook his head, and went into the store. I got in my car, and my hands were shaking on the wheel. But it was a different kind of shake. It wasn't adrenaline. It was relief. A clean, deep relief. In that moment, I knew I'd won. I'd won the only fight that ever mattered. I'd beaten my own worst self. That's when I finally understood what I'd been trying to say. The prison, the lost years, the broken family, that was the cost. But the lesson, the real lesson, was in that gas station parking lot. That's when I finally understood what I'd been trying to say. The prison, the lost years, the broken family, that was the cost. But the lesson, the real lesson, was in that gas station parking lot. It was in the choice to drive away. Here's what I understand now, at 41, that I was too stupid to see at 28. That tough guy act is a prison you build for yourself long before the state ever builds one for you. The walls are your pride. The bars are your temper. The sentence is a life where every sideways glance is a challenge. Every quiet moment is just the calm before the next storm. I was already serving time on those streets. The judge just made it concrete. The respect I thought I was earning? It was just fear. And fear is the cheapest currency there is. It evaporates the second you're not in the room. The people I was trying to impress, my brothers, the crew, they didn't visit. After the first year, the letters stopped. They had their own lives, their own problems. They moved on. The block moved on. The world doesn't stop because you decide to be its hardest man. It just goes around you. The only person who has to live with your choices forever is you. You wake up with yourself. You go to sleep with yourself. And in a cell, you're just alone with that person for 23 hours a day, with nothing but the echo of your own bad decisions. I had to sit in that silence and watch my life evaporate. I had to watch my parents get old in pictures my brother sent. I had to miss my nephews growing up. That empty space on my family's couch? I put myself there. Not Ray, not his cousin, not the cops. Me. My choices. So if you're out there right now, maybe you're that kid on the bus I saw. Maybe you're just someone who feels that old, familiar heat in your chest when someone looks at you wrong. I need you to ask yourself the question I never asked. Prove it to who? And for what? What's the trophy? A story your boys will laugh about for a week? A night in a holding cell? A scar? Or is it a lifetime of looking at a family photo you're not in? Is it the sound of your mother's silence? Let me tell you what real strength is. It's not in your fists. Anybody can throw a punch. Anybody can break a bottle. That's easy. Real strength is in your choices. It's walking away from a fight you know you can win, because you finally understand what you'll lose if you don't. It's swallowing your pride instead of letting it choke you. The toughest thing you will ever do is de-escalate. To take a breath, to say, my bad, and just keep walking. That takes more guts than any fight, because you're not afraid of the other guy anymore. You're afraid of the person you might become, the ghost of your own future, and you choose, right there in that moment, not to be him. I'm 41 now. I work in a warehouse. I live in a small, quiet apartment. My family, we talk. It's fragile. It might always be. That damage runs deep. I wasted my 20s. I can't get those years back. They're just gone. But I'm trying, every single day, to build something with my 40s. Something peaceful. Something that doesn't depend on who I can intimidate. You, if you're young, you have your whole life ahead of you. You have time I don't have. Don't waste it like I did. Use it to build something that lasts. A skill, a real relationship, a peaceful life, a reputation for being dependable, for being kind, for being someone who keeps his word. Not a reputation that'll land you in a cell or a coffin. That kid on the bus? I hope he hears this. I hope you hear this. Your life is worth more than a moment of false pride. Your future is worth more than the approval of people who won't be there when it counts. This is the kind of story we share here. Real people, real mistakes, real lessons learned the hard way so maybe you don't have to. If this meant something to you, if it hit a nerve or made you think, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There are more stories like mine, from people who've been through all kinds of things, and there might be one that speaks directly to you. Leave me a comment down below. Tell me, have you ever walked away from a fight? Was there a moment you chose different? Or are you in the middle of that struggle right now? I read them. It helps to know this isn't just echoing in an empty room. Hit that like button if this resonated with you. And please, share this. Share it with that kid you know who's always puffing his chest out. Share it with a friend who might need to hear it. You never know what might click for someone. If you have your own story, something you learned through pain or loss that could help someone else avoid your mistakes, there's a form down in the description. Fill it out. Your voice might be the one that changes a life. Maybe next time we'll be sharing your story. A book that helped me when I got out, when I was trying to make sense of all that wasted time, was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's not an easy read, but it's about finding purpose even in suffering. There's a link in the description if you're interested. Don't make my mistake. Don't trade your life for a title that doesn't exist. The world has enough tough guys. What it needs are more wise ones. Be that. Choose that. Your future self will thank you.